Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of SuperCoach TV, KFC SuperCoach TV. In fact, with myself, Al Payton, in the bunker here at the Herald Sun in Melbourne, and joining me, as always, the Phantom from the lair over the border in South Australia. Phantom, welcome aboard. I know last week we spent about the first 10 minutes of the show debating what to do with Clayton Oliver, given he was likely to miss another week, and your position at that stage was to hold. I don't really want to put you through all that again because I know you've had him all this time, and it looks like now who knows when he's going to be back. So we can probably do this a lot quicker. Is it now time that we just pretend Clayton Oliver never happened?
Hello, hello, KFC SuperCoaches. I'm in a bunker too. I'm bunkering down, hiding away from the mess that is my KFC SuperCoach team. Clayton Oliver, as you mentioned, has turned into probably the worst hold of all time in the history of world sport, the history of KFC SuperCoach. Something we'll probably talk about and reference for years to come when any primo gets an injury. Disappointing. If it is a setback, which was reported on Wednesday night, if it is another setback, then that's a worry. Even if it's only a minor one, he's obviously doing something wrong too early in his bid to return. So you can't see him playing for a couple of weeks now. If they do confirm it, there's more damage on the scam. I'll be here from Melbourne, and I'll be trading this week. Finally, I think I traded him in. I had him in my team for 2 weeks. And I've had him on the bench for 7. So it's been a long 9 weeks, but I'll be moving on.
And who's at the top of his shopping list? I guess at least the one saving grace is he hasn't lost any money in that time, so you can pretty much pick anyone. So do you just try and get a top scorer that you maybe haven't had that's been costing you, like a Zach Merritt type? Do you go for someone completely different, like Libba or Adam Chera, a massive pod to try and set yourself apart? Or another path, I guess, could be to try and find someone a bit cheaper and use the money to, bolster a couple of positions in your team. But that requires trades, which we're starting to run out of.
Well, shock horror, Nat Fyfe was injured on the weekend. The only thing more guaranteed in life is the English complaining, which we've all enjoyed this week. Looking forward to what's going to happen there tonight as well. But I've got to move on Nat Fyfe. I was always going to make one upgrade. It was going to be someone else and try to keep Nat Fyfe as a mid-forward swing for the run home. That's not going to happen. I'll move on Fyfe, 313k. So got some money to play with there. Ideally, I'd move Clary, you're right, to one of the big guns I don't have. I still don't have Bomb, don't have Merritt. Someone like Caleb Sarong's pretty cheap too. But I want to move on Fyfe as well. I think I have 120 or 30k in the bank, but I need some money from the Clary trade. So at this point, I'll be looking at Oliver and Fyfe out, and Zach Butters and Luke Davies-Uniacke. I'm going back there.
Oh, wow.
Back in 494k. That allows me to get in Butters. The big guy in the forward line, the guy that can score 180 on Saturday night, Adelaide Oval against the Gold Coast Suns. I need someone who can do that a couple of times in the run home. He's a bit different. I need to try something, which I've been saying for seems like months now. But I will be going for Zach Butters, and it leaves me with just enough cash to go with LDU, who I thought was pretty good last week. 94k for SuperCoach points in 67% game time. Eased him back into it. He still led the team for contested possessions and clearances. So we also know he can go big too, which he showed in the opening 2 rounds of the year. So I'm backing him in to do that a couple more times before the season's out, and that's where I'm at. But interesting week. Obviously, Josh Dunkley, another big talking point, another big issue to discuss.
Yeah, definitely. We'll get to that in a sec because I thought I was certain you were going to say this guy. Unless did you bring him in last week? Callum Mills, the most popular traded in player of the week, just over 400,000 for. I think we can say he's a genuine premium midfielder, even if he's maybe not quite at the very top of the tree like he was last year. If you bring him in as your M8 probably, which what a lot of people would be doing. And I mean, some have the luxury of having him as M9 as a kind of a bench cover, but I'm not in that position. But I think I will bring him in as my final midfielder. And given the cheap price, I mean, you could afford him and, well, I like Butters though. You can't really go past him for his scoring potential and a nice pod. But is he a bit more reliable than LDU?
Definitely. I wouldn't hesitate to pick Callum Mills. I went with him last week, went early. But yeah, again, if you are out there, it's a great move, great money-making move. It's like a downgrade. Clayton
Yeah.
Oliver, Callum Mills to get you enough money to do something else. We saw him last week, clean, efficient as he usually is, a season high, 72% centre bounces for Callum Mills. And everyone will say, or some will say, oh, Chad Warner wasn't there, which is true. Mills only had 24 centre bounces the week before against the Eagles, but slightly misleading those numbers because Chad Warner that day only had 32% himself. The Swans rotated around on ball that day. So I still think Mills, obviously Horse can still move him around. He's probably still going to, given how versatile he is, but Mills is still definitely in that best midfield. And hopefully we see him start and finish there more often than not in the run home. So it's great buying. Don't hesitate to finish your team with him. We talk about sometimes compromising on points to take this value, but I think we can. We're not doing that with Callum Mills as such. He was moved around heavily. You look back over his scores; he's still averaged 100 points before the injury. So fingers crossed for a more consistent midfield role in the run home. But again, if I didn't go last week, we locked him in for Oliver this week.
Yeah, and I mean the matchup tonight looks pretty attractive as well. Unfortunately for me, but the Tigers tend to give up points in the midfield, as we saw last week with Lockie Neal and Dunkley until he got subbed out. So should be plenty of points on offer there for the Swans midfielders. Any concern over his calf? He missed about 6 weeks with a calf injury. It can be the sort of thing that can come back and reoccur. But I mean, given the value, I think it's pretty hard to pass up.
Yeah, calf's always a worry. Josh Dunkley, obviously, the knock in the calf. LDU as well early in the year. Darcy Parish. It's not what you want to hear. But look, he's back. Maybe he's had a little bit more history, but hasn't broken down big time all the time. So, we say anyone can get injured from this point onwards. I think that it's not enough to overlook at that price.
Yeah, I agree with that. So my position that I'm in is 5 out. Yep, makes sense. As Anthony says here, that's probably the last time we'll be picking Nat Fife in KFC SuperCoach. I've actually picked him twice this year and had to trade him out now both times. So I didn't learn my lesson the first time, but I think I have now. Even if he's 250k at the start of next year, I probably don't think I can do it. But unfortunately, I don't have enough money in the bank to go straight from him to Mills, which would be brilliant move if you can pull that off, but you need about 90 grand, I think. So given I've got 5 trades left, which is 1 or 2 more than I know a few people certainly in the office do. I think it's 4 more than Tim Mitchell has. Would you use? Don't want to give too much away. Would you want to use? Would you use 2 trades in that position to downgrade Fife to say a David Cunningham, who's on the bubble at the Blues at about 165k? He's also mid forward, just for a bit of bench cover for him. Hopefully, that's all I need him for the rest of the year. And then that gives me enough money to turn. I've got Will Ashcroft in the midfield. I can maybe trade him to Mills and have some money left over. So, but I mean, is it worth using 2 trades to get a Fife to Mills, or would you be looking for someone, sideways or cheaper from Nat Fife?
Interesting one. I think in your situation and other KFC SuperCoaches in a similar spot to you, I think you can do it. I think Mills is, we know how good a player is. He might not average 117 points per game he did last season as a pure midfielder, but we just know how good he is and how good he can be. I don't think, if Mills was 600k this week and he'd come back, you wouldn't you wouldn't really think twice making the upgrade by using an extra trade. So I'd do it in your spot. If you're out there and it's your final trade, would you use 2 trades to get Callum Mills? I'm not sure I'd probably do that. I wrote early in the week, burning questions online now, if you want to check it out, that you might not do it in that situation because things can pop up. Things are going to pop up. I think at this stage of every season, we go back and look at the injuries and the suspensions that occurred in the last 6 or 7 weeks of the season, and there's a lot. So Josh Dunkley's popped up this week, the number 1 scorer in the game since round 8. So, what after happens in 3 weeks' time? And we've all definitely got no trades left, or you've used your last trade this week, making a nice little upgrade, but then you can't cover Josh Dunkley when Ryan Marich is out, someone else gets injured, and you can't cover Josh Dunkley down the track, or can't cover a Josh Dunkley equivalent type injury down the track, then you're probably going to lose more ground than you make up by making the upgrade. So in your spot, KFC SuperCoach is out there with a few in the bank, I'd do it. But if it means you've got 0 trades left, I probably wouldn't.
Quick one here from Travis. I don't know if you watched this game closely last week. Darcy Fogarty and Lockie Fogarty at the Blues and David Cunningham both scored very similarly in the 90s in that big win against Hawthorn. Very similarly priced, sort of in the 160 option, and I think they're both mid forwards too. So do you have a preference either way there? Which one more sustainable? I think Cunningham kicked a couple of goals, which makes me a little bit nervous that he's not going to do that every week. But Fogarty's sort of maybe more of a pressure forwarding type. So they're probably both scores are a little bit inflated against Hawthorn compared to what we would expect going forward. So it's really probably about the job security as much as anything.
Yeah, 6 centre bounces for Cunningham on the weekend, 21%. For the Blues, 11% for Fogarty, which probably makes it 3. For him on the weekend, so that's good signs for both. Good signs for Cunningham. Fogarty 7 tackles, I think. So I think if anyone's going to see more of the ball, maybe we've seen Fogarty do it at times in his career. Haven't been able to lock down the spot, but Watch probably noticed Cunningham more, very clean, tough, and creative, pushing up higher up the ground. So I think I'd prefer him, despite the fact he's only played double-digit games in any season since being drafted in 2015. So, you're going 5 to David Cunningham. You're not going for some reliable, durable replacement. But I think at the price, what he can give the Blues, we've seen Sam Doherty probably settle in defence, Sam Walsh, who we'll talk about in a little bit, I'm sure, spending some time in front of the ball, at least to start with anyway. So Cunningham's seeing a little bit of time through the middle. So I reckon I'd go him.
Yeah, there's some suggestion here that Fogarty had a good score the week before, but they were both very similar. I think Cunningham in the 40s and then 90-something, and then Fogarty, I think, scored 51 the week before and then 99. So, hard to split them based on that. Quick reference here to, you mentioned Sam Walsh, but another one in the mix for, we've got the last round of in-season position changes will come in to effect after lockout on Sunday night and then be ready for round 18. And there's actually some pretty interesting names on there. Normally by this stage, there's not sort of too many left, but Max Gawn has been on the precipice a couple of times and he's right there again going into this round. And Walsh and Jack Sinclair also all sort of sitting right on that 35% mark. So it'll very much come down to what they do this weekend. And then Nick Dacos looks like he should get it. He's at about 40% midfield time at the moment. So he should be a def mid after this weekend as well. But, probably a bit late for it to change your trade plans too much. But it'd be handy if there's a couple of guys that you've already got, get DPP.
Yeah, Max Gawn's an interesting one. If you haven't sort of committed to Darcy Cameron as your ruck cover,
true.
And you're looking to do that, maybe you wait and go with Gawn. Again, if you wait this week, he doesn't get it, then you're 2 weeks behind. There's not that many rounds left by that point anyway. But just something to consider potentially if you were still trying to get or planning to go for Darcy Cameron or some ruck backup with Max Gawn there. And of course, if you've still got Kieran Briggs maybe on the bench or something, obviously there's some room to move there. If you do have Gawn, Sam Walsh becomes a forward. Hopefully, we think, as you mentioned, right on the champion data threshold to get that dual position. But again, he's been a little bit underwhelming in comparison to some of the other big names forwards, especially. He's nowhere near Zach Butters, who I'm trading in this week. Even Jack McRae, who we spoke about a lot at the last DPP changes. He's a forward now. He's still going pretty well without absolutely dominating. He's probably still a better pick than Sam Walsh. Obviously, the price is the one here. So if you can't afford the bigger names, then Sam Walsh is a pretty good price, depending on what he scores this week. But it's still in the low 500s. So that probably pushes you. But again, if you said to me at the start of the year, Sam Walsh a forward, absolutely a must-have. Right now, he's probably not.
Yeah. Now, Geordie, a long-time viewer here, we don't want to hear this kind of thing, mate.
Oh, okay. Geordie. He obviously doesn't have him. Geordie probably doesn't have Tom Stewart, so he's probably run out onto GMHBA Stadium and giving him a clip when he's trying to train there on a Thursday afternoon. But keep an eye on that.
Yes,
keep an eye on that.
yeah. Not haven't seen that one yet, but we've been on here, but we'll keep an eye out. Hopefully, that's not another one we have to worry about. But you did mention Josh Dunkley's probably the big issue of the week, really. For he's in about 75% of teams, I think, and we know he's going to miss this week. And Brisbane hasn't been super clear in terms of how long he's going to be out for. I mean, I suppose the glass half full interpretation is that they're going to play West Coast. You could probably afford to rest him for a week, and he'll just come back in the next week. But we don't really know that, so could be one or two. I mean, could these kind of injuries have stretched out to longer than that? So, I mean, my sort of thoughts, if you're just thinking about Dunkley, is that you wouldn't trade him this week, hold him, and hopefully we've got some kind of cover on the bench, and then see what happens next week. And if it starts to look like it might be longer, then we could contemplate it. But what about Jono's situation here, where he's got Dunkley and Fife, and he's only got 2 trades left, and not much money either. So, I mean, I think it really comes down to who's on your bench, and unfortunately, that probably was Fife for a lot of us. But if you can cover Dunkley with anyone, especially if it's an Angus Sheldrick type, or I mean, I think we both picked up Marcus Windhager, who looked a lot better last week, but still his score wasn't amazing. But I think I can afford to play him for at least one game and see what happens with Dunkley. And then Fife, we've sort of talked about him already. If you don't have much money, though, it makes it tricky.
Yeah, Jono's in the situation, I guess, we discussed earlier, that if he were to upgrade Fife, he'd have to make a downgrade, another move, which would exhaust all his trades. So it probably depends on where Fife is for Jono. Probably let us know in the comments. If he is, just say on the bench, then you're probably not going to upgrade him just to cover Jono. Hopefully, like you mentioned, someone else comes in. But with Dunkley, you probably the great Selby Maria's Magic Fantasy Goat tweeted earlier in the week and reminded the fantasy community that George Hewitt had a corked calf last year. It was meant to be 1 week, or we'll see how he goes next week, and he missed the rest of the season, last final 5 rounds of the year. So not saying that Josh Dunkley's that. I think it's probably more let's be cautious, we're playing the Eagles this week, than a George Hewitt type scenario with Josh Dunkley. So I wouldn't be trading him this week. But Jono's a tough one here. He's come back and he said, I have Fife at F7, Marich at F8. So it's an interesting one. You probably have to play Marich for Dunkley this week. Jono, I reckon I wouldn't use your final 2 trades to upgrade your F7. If that would be Jono's situation. So I wouldn't use my final 2 trades for that. I'm not sure if you have any other thoughts. You can probably
I think so. And I mean, as long as you can get someone on the field, I think when you're down to only 1 or even 2 trades, it's really just they're there to avoid zeros. So as long as you can get someone on, and I mean, I saw a couple of other people commenting using Ryan Marich as well, and he was really good last week. Was a late in and then scored 75 or so. Kicked a couple of goals against the Saints. Had a nice rundown tackle in the middle of the ground, but he's playing Brisbane this week, so might find it a little bit tougher. But any points are better than nothing. So I think I'd be saying, like, what is there, 7 weeks to go? What if someone like Connor Rosie breaks down next week and he's out for the rest of the year, and you're facing 5 donuts? So I think that's the emergency situation. You need to hang on to that last trade for.
The other sort of alternative is to consider someone, maybe like a Liam Henry, a little bit different, back-to-back KFC SuperCoach tons for him. So settled in on the wing, and the Freo seem to be keeping possession a lot more in the last fortnight, which they were doing earlier in the year. It's reflective also in Luke Ryan's possession numbers, similar to what he was doing at the start of the year too. So back-to-back SuperCoach tons for Liam Henry, pretty much a straight swap for Nat Fife. But again, if you've got Marich there, at least see how he goes in the first game on Saturday afternoon before committing to that.
You also got our man Sam Flanders. He'd be around a similar price.
Yeah, it's been good. Where was that out in the few rounds? Stewie Jew, where was that? That's why we picked him. It's exactly why we picked him, for what he's done since he's come back into the side. It's been a year.
A couple of tons the last 2 weeks. Be risky, I think, with Tug Miller coming back in, but I mean, it does show that we weren't completely missing the mark when we thought he was all right at the start of the year as a SuperCoach selection. couple of other quick ones to get through. I saw a good question here about making trades in defence. I don't think she's always someone you have to trade out, but if you've got the money and the trades, it could get you a little bit of an advantage if you get in a top line primo to replace him. Who do you like out of Dan Houston or Sam Doherty? They've both been pretty good lately. Obviously, Houston had a very big moment last week, but he's been scoring well anyway. He doesn't have to kick the match-winning goal to put up a good score.
Yep, and some big scores from him too, Dan Houston. When he gets on a roll, he does go big. So I don't mind Houston over Doherty for something different there as well, especially when a lot of teams are keeping your Sheasels and Will Day, which Aussie Soda here says as well. He's tossing up, deciding to trade Sheasel over Day. I'd go Houston, and I don't mind it. Leaves him with 3 trades. You can sort of probably just fits into the I have enough trades to make a luxury move. I think, especially if you've got some other cover elsewhere.
What about talking about luxury moves? If you did have some trades and you wanted to maybe try and do something bold, did see a question. Where is it? Here it is from Nate. I think the answer to that would have to be yes, wouldn't it? But you'd want to have enough trades and sort of be prepared that Dunkley might come back next week and sort of burn you over the last 5 or 6 rounds. But I mean, Merritt's been scoring so well that it's hard to see really losing out on that one.
Yeah, you're right. I tend to lean towards you want to have enough trades to maybe even get him back in. Yeah, what do you think? Number 1 KFC SuperCoach scorer since round 8 by a pretty fair way, I think, in the end. So, that could hurt in the long run. I know, you're not going to lose much one-on-one Merritt v Dunkley. Like, it depends on the situation or where the rest of your team is placed. But a very luxury move. But in saying that, I guess, if you really want to make up ground, you're struggling to do that, this could be the week you get a few back on some people ahead of you in the rankings. Just be aware that, when they bring Dunkley back on the field next week and you don't have him, then you could sort of lose some ground there.
Yeah. Question here from Callum about Jack Steele. What
do you think?
Surely he's had a couple more than that, but yeah, he's been very disappointing. I mean, he's playing, that's the thing, and I don't think he wasn't that bad last week, but yeah, his scoring's definitely not up what we
2 tons for the 2 tons for the year. That's right. That's correct.
Is that right? 2 tons for the whole year.
Yep.
He is too. Yeah, just looking at that now. I did not know that. That's shocking. Bloody hell. But 97, 86 the last 2 weeks. Again, it's how many trades you got left.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. It's hard to watch him play almost at the moment because we know he's so much better than that. He'll be very cheap at the start of next year. But oh man, would you just cut the cord now if you had enough trades left to do it? I guess you're not getting much for him for 400 and something K.
No, if you got some cash in a few trades, you could get to a Mills or could you get to an LDU? You're probably getting a bit more out of those guys if you've got the cash. But again, you're right. You have to have a full team, trades in the bank, some cover. You wouldn't be going down to 1 or 0 or, again, like we've discussed all show, things can and will happen from this point onwards. So you don't want to exhaust your trades just to move on still as frustrating as he's been. Yeah,
no, it's just really unlucky, really, because he looked pretty good value around the sort of Saints coming off the bye. The timing was good and everything, but I'm not sure what's going on, if there's some injuries or something that we don't really know about. And we'll get to some captains talk in a second. I think we've answered this one. Lucas, if you tuned in from the top, the Phantom is a massive Callum Mills fan. Got him last week. He wasn't even waiting for the price to come down. And he's coming in this week for me, I think. I mean, would you make that move, Phantom, in my position where I've got Will Ashcroft, who's probably hang on to him longer than a lot of people, and he's been really good, 421K, and he's playing West Coast at the Gabba this week. So that was kind of part of my thinking that I'll hang on to him for these Gabba games because we know he scores so well at home. I think he's averaging 100 in home games, scored 111 last week. But his break-even is in the 60s, I think, 66. So he'll sort of still go up a little bit, hopefully. But I better just to jump across to Mills now because he's potentially going to make a heap of money if he scores really well against Richmond.
Yeah, his break-even's 47, Callum Mills. That's the cheapest you're going to get him for some time. And from this point onwards, he's going to get Will Ashcroft, even if he doesn't this week. So Yeah, it's a hard one because it'd be tough watching on to the afternoon when he comes out and has 35 against the Eagles, which he could do. No, Josh Dunkley. And could the difference between he and Mills be similar next week? Maybe. But again, we're backing Callum Mills to score well tonight. So I think do it now. I'll give you some more flexibility for you next week in case you go do something else or something else happens or Josh Dunkley has a setback and you have to trade him. So probably just pull the trigger.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about the no Dunkley factor. That's interesting because Ashcroft's CBAs were down a fair bit last week, but yeah, you think he'd get back in there with Dunkley out. So something to think about. But we better talk about captains because at this time of year, it obviously is a massive point of difference, or where you can make some ground. And it's Friday night, the footy is on, and your KFC Friday night feast is on its way. Score free delivery on your Friday night footy feast every Friday when ordering through the KFC app or kfc.com.au. It's game on. We've got Thursday night footy again tonight, the Swans and the Tigers. Some interesting potential captaincy options there. And then the Friday night game, there's plenty to choose from. So who do you like this weekend, Phantom, for the C and the VC?
Oh, it's an even bigger Friday night this weekend. Now the first couple of games of the round, with a couple of buckets of KFC, I think should be some very good viewing. I'm not going to go anyone tonight. Errol Gordon could go big, we know, against the Tigers. Callum Mills, maybe even as Adrian says here in the comments. But I don't have Marcus Bontempelli, who would be one to consider on Friday night. Nick Dacos too went massive again last week. They're the two. But I'm going to go with Lachie Neale on Saturday afternoon, the first game. I think against the Eagles at the Gabba, he could be the biggest score of the round. So, if Dacos or Bont score 120, 125, you're probably taking that on Friday night. But I'm just worried that Lachie Neale comes out and scores 170, 180, and you don't get that. So, again, the safer option is probably fall back into Lachie Neale, given the confidence we have in him scoring well on Saturday against the Lions. But I'm swinging for the fences, going to go Lachie Neale VC. And then it makes it a little bit harder with backup captain options. Maybe Tom Stewart against North, Jordan Dawson, who we discussed on the Lair. The hipster has mentioned a couple of times now, and the numbers do back it up. Jordan Dawson is the one that seems to stand up and score big in the big games for the Crows. And when it's a bit more one-sided, hasn't scored as well. But this is a big game for the Crows against the Bombers. An 8-point game. One of the Crows described it as last week. So Dawson, Stewart as backup captain option. Zach Merritt, if you got it. Neale VC for me.
Yeah, I think Merritt will probably be my backup. I'm definitely looking at that Brisbane West Coast game with Dunkley out. As you said, Lachie Neale should have an absolute field day, although the Eagles were a lot better last week, but they definitely seem to get themselves up for that game, bouncing back from the absolute shock of the week before. So it'll be interesting to see if they can bring the same level of pressure this week against the Lions. The other interesting one that we shouldn't ignore is Nick Dacos, as you mentioned, and Angelo here as well. There's some good numbers from our friend Fantasy Freako in the KFC SuperCoach form guide, which is online at the moment at Code Sports and the Advertiser and Herald Sun sites, where he has some numbers on who has had the most 120 plus games this year, and Nick Dacos is clearly number one on that list. So we probably need to be talking about him a bit more as a captain. And after we both locked in Josh Dunkley's 143 as VC last week, thought we had the group chat covered in terms of captaincy scores. And then, of course, Tim goes and puts the C on Nick Dacos and outscored us both by about 5 points. So that was a bit annoying to watch, I must admit, even though we both have Dacos in our teams as well. But coming up against the Bulldogs Friday night, I guess they don't tag, but we definitely shouldn't be leaving him out of the captaincy equation. That just about wraps us up for this week. I do need to mention as well that I want to get a plug in. People, save this date in your diary. If you're in Melbourne, at least, maybe Phantom can get the flight across. But we have a live SuperCoach event at the pub at Crown on Friday, August the 4th, which is Friday night game, the Dogs and Richmond, to kick off the KFC SuperCoach finals in private leagues. So More details coming, but there'll be an expert panel and some trivia and prizes and all that sort of stuff. So should be a really fun night. So August the 4th, the Friday night, be great for people to get along. But Phantom, thanks for jumping on. Another tough week. Finally, say goodbye to Clayton Oliver and don't worry about him anymore until we start debating at the start of next year whether we can trust him again. But hopefully you can move on from that.
Until he plays next week, scores 200. That would hurt.
Yeah,
you might not see me here next. You might not see me here.
Yeah, that would be fair enough. I think surely hardly anyone's got him now. I think there was a final question up here about do we cut and run on him? And yeah, I think here we go. We'll leave the final word here for Lee. I think the answer is yes, especially because we just don't know when he's going to be back. It's too uncertain, so you don't want to have to be worrying about that. Get someone else in who you know is going to score well. Christian Petrarca is an obvious straight swap, or someone like Zach Merritt, throw in a real pod and have someone to really barrack for in the final 7 or 8 rounds of a Libba type. I reckon it'd be pretty fun to own as well.
Yep, indeed. One more. We might finish off our one more. I got this. Julian's just having a little crack at you, I think. You're going to trade him, and Julian might make him VC, but you love the banter in KFC SuperCoach.
Yeah, it's tough. I have to make that call today because obviously with Mills playing tonight, so no procrastination. But we'll see. Still not 100% decided on that. I mean, it'll probably in the end probably won't make a huge difference either way. They'll probably both make a bit of money, and I can make the trade this week or next week. So have to decide that in the next few hours. Don't forget, everybody, Thursday night footy, so get your trades and everything in before the bounce for the Tigers and the Swans. Thanks, fandom. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and we'll catch you again soon.